Despite the current war on terror, or Islam, or whatever you want to call it, both Britain and America are still very good friends with certain Arab countries because these countries provide us with a very valuable service. They allow us to send people we don't like to their countries to be tortured legally, and that way we're not doing anything morally wrong. One of these countries is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which is well known as an exclusively Islamic country. None of this multi-faith nonsense for them. In fact, it's against the law even to preach Christianity in Saudi Arabia, and the penalty is death. Well, that would certainly put a stop to it, so let's not dismiss it out of hand. This is because they subscribe to Sharia law, which is of course the Islamic legal code, which has been designed to put the fear of God into men and to put the fear of men into women, it seems to me, particularly the fear of men with beards into women. But there's an irony here, because everybody knows that Muslims don't drink alcohol. They won't have a drink, not even at Christmas. And yet Sharia law has a lot in common with the campaign for real ale. Both were devised by men with beards for the benefit of men with beards. The big difference, of course, is that the campaign for real ale doesn't have women stoned to death for no reason. And a very good thing too. After all, somebody's got to work the bar, and then somebody's got to drive afterwards. Well done, lads. That's using the brain. Congratulations on that one. Now, despite the fact that most of the 9/11 lunatics were Saudis, and quite a few prominent Saudis were spirited out of the United States by the Bush family before the FBI could ask them why they did it, we're still friends with Saudi Arabia because they've got lots and lots of oil. In fact, it would be difficult to think of a more oily country than Saudi Arabia. Now, you might say, well, why be friends with people like this? They're obviously scumbags. Why don't we just go in there and take the oil like we usually do? But you see, if we did that, then they wouldn't buy any more weapons from us, and then our whole economy would probably collapse. And this is why, for example, the Saudis were able to embarrass the British government recently, and with their record that takes some doing, by threatening to cancel a massive arms deal if the British police continued to investigate bribery allegations against members of their so-called royal family. Naturally, our government caved into these threats like a paper cup because apparently it's in our country's interests to brown-nose a bunch of sleazy medieval gangsters, which, in my opinion, makes us almost as creepy as the Bush family. And I thought that was genuinely impossible. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Saudi Arabia that couldn't be cured by civilization, because it's not my place to say that. The truth is, I haven't visited the country, so, for example, I've never had the privilege of attending a public execution. Watching somebody have their head removed with a sword, what's uncivilized about that? Apart from the fact that you can't get a cold beer to enjoy while you're watching it. Now, that really is uncivilized. No, I've never been to Saudi Arabia, so I've never had the chance to witness the religious police prevent the rescue of young women from a burning building because they're not wearing the correct headgear. I wasn't actually there when those 15 young girls burnt to death for absolutely no reason, so I can't comment on it. And I wouldn't dream of doing so because that would be disrespectful. And anyway, just because Saudi Arabia is single-handedly responsible for the poisonous Wahhabi brand of fundamentalist Islam that's plagued this planet like the AIDS virus for the past few decades, and just because Saudi Arabia finances all the murderous madrasas in Pakistan where the London bombers learned their godless ideology, that doesn't mean that I've got anything against the place or its rulers. Far from it. About that far from it. But if I could make just one small positive suggestion. Everybody knows that Saudi Arabia is very rich in certain mineral deposits, notably, of course, sand. Oh my goodness me, it's got so much sand it could export the stuff. Or, even better, it could import a load of water and cement, mix itself into a giant block of concrete and do us all a huge favour. Oh, and another thing. Nobody is going to convince me that the King of Saudi Arabia has never had a drink. I don't care what you say. With his money, there's no way that he just limits himself to cocaine and hookers. He looks like a Jack Daniels man to me. Obviously I can't prove that statement, but then we all know that you don't need proof when you've got faith. Peace. You know it makes sense.